Welcome to the Bible Savvy Podcast, a weekly conversation about how to understand, enjoy, and apply God's Word. It's time to jump into a new passage from the Bible Savvy reading plan.
Hey everybody, I'm here with Pastor Courtney and Pastor David, and we've got a guest here today. This is Courtney Scott. She is one of our residents here at Christ Community Church.
Does that mean she lives at the church?
It does.
It feels like I do sometimes.
Let me explain what a resident is. We have a program here where people who are pastors in training can spend 2 years hanging out with pastors on our staff, doing ministry in different departments and learning what it means, as well as getting an education while we do that. So Courtney is one of our residents in adult ministries. So why don't you explain a little bit of what that means for you? Like, what do you regularly do as a resident?
Yeah, so I'm about a year into the 2-year program, and the first few months I just did a lot of shadowing, observing, just seeing, all the different types of ministries that go on here. Right now, my focus is in care night, so I'm shadowing on Tuesdays and just kind of seeing the ropes of care. And I do a lot with Rooted. So starting in the fall, I'll take over directing Rooted again at St. Charles, and so that's kind of a big passion of mine too.
Yeah. So Courtney's been a part of our team. David and I work with her closely for the last year, and it's been awesome. So we decided, let's have some fun and have her on the podcast. So why don't we start with a banter question?
Yeah.
What do you got?
All right, so I'm stealing this. We have a board in the adult ministries office with like a question of the week, and I really liked it. So I'm just stealing it and reusing it. The question this week is, if you got to compete on a game show, what game show would you choose and why?
All right. What game shows are you guys on?
I love watching Let's Make a Deal. So I would wear the costume. Like, you get to dress up.
Yeah.
It's like all kinds of like favorite things, right? Like, I get to dress up. I can be whatever I want. I can totally dress up. And then I don't know, I kind of like the risk factor. I like the do you want what's behind door number 2, or do you want the blender? And I'm like, door number 2, let's do it.
Yeah, okay.
And then if it's like a flock of chickens, okay, cool, I'll take the chickens home. Like, I'm good. I just think it'd be fun game show to be on.
Courtney?
I would say Family Feud, only because my family would make that very interesting. I don't think that we would win. I just think we would cause too much chaos that it would just be a lot of fun.
It'd be entertaining.
Yeah.
That is the point.
Okay.
I would be on Jeopardy because
obviously I was going to answer for you. I was like, if you're not on Jeopardy, what are we doing here?
So this is true. Every day when I would come home from school, my grandmother lived with me, and so I would go in my grandma's room after school, and we would watch an episode of the Spider-Man cartoon and Jeopardy, one for her, one for me, and eat dried apricots together.
Wait, one for her, one for you. So was hers Spider-Man?
So she loves Spider-Man. No,
yours was Jeopardy.
but it made it so then I loved watching Jeopardy and
that's
good. And I love trivia. So
that's good.
David.
All right. Well, I've shared on here that I do love Survivor, and I've thought about what could I survive 26 days on an island? I don't think I would because I hate seafood and they have to eat fish. So I decided I'm not going to choose Survivor, but I actually was going to say Family Feud as well, but not with my family. I would do it with other pastors here on staff at Christ Community because I think that would be hilarious, and I would personally enjoy that experience. So if you guys want to apply with me, we could do like a Bible savvy,
really
I think
Family
it sounds
Feud
like
thing.
the next maybe team building.
I think we should do this.
Yeah.
I'm way too
Courtney
competitive.
would lose her Christian witness on live TV.
We would not be friends afterwards. I would start a second podcast called
That's good.
All right, so let's go to our passage today. We're actually starting a new book of the Bible. We are going to be back in the Old Testament. We're in Deuteronomy. So this whole year we have been reading the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, and we finished up Numbers about a month and a half or so ago, and we're coming back to the 5th book in the Pentateuch, Deuteronomy. As always, when you start a new book, we recommend getting some context. So the easiest way to do that is to watch a Bible Project video on this. They got a couple of different versions of the Deuteronomy one. Both are really helpful. Checking the first few pages in Study Bible before that book has some good information. You're going to find that. We also are releasing this Wednesday an interview I did with Dr. Sandra Richter, which was so much fun, guys.
So good.
It was so good. She is brilliant, especially about the cultural context of the Bible. So I felt felt like I could have talked with her for like 3 hours and just kept asking questions. And it was really, really helpful. So if you want to check that out, that should be coming out on Wednesday. And I think we're doing a book giveaway with that too. So if you go and comment on that video, it should get you entered into that. All right, let me give you a little bit of context for this passage. We're going to be in Deuteronomy 4, and Deuteronomy is basically a series of sermons from Moses. So Moses has led the people out of slavery to the promised land. All of the wandering in between has happened, but they're finally on the edge of the land. And Moses knows, I'm not going to go in. I'm going to die before this happens, but I'm going to give my final charge to the people, this new generation that's going to go into the land and remind them of all the things they need to know. So he's doing that. And these first few chapters, he's kind of retelling their story. He's saying, this is where we've been, what we've been through. Make sure you don't forget what that is. And along the way, he's saying, here's some of the lessons that we've learned as we do that. And so we're going to pick it up in Deuteronomy chapter 4, starting in verse 15. And we're going to go, I think, to the end of the chapter, verse 31. So, Courtney, you want to read?
I got it. You saw no form of any kind the day the Lord spoke to you at Horeb out of the fire. Therefore, watch yourselves very carefully, so that you do not become corrupt and make for yourselves an idol, an image of any shape, whether formed like a man or a woman, or like any animal on earth, or any bird that flies in the air, or like any creature that moves along the ground, or any fish in the waters below. And when you look up to the sky and see the sun, the moon, and the stars, all the heavenly array, do not be enticed into bowing down to them and worshiping things the Lord your God has apportioned to all the nations under heaven. But as for you, the Lord took you and brought you out of the iron smelting furnace, out of Egypt, to be the people of his inheritance, as you now are. The Lord was angry with me because of you, and he solemnly swore that I would not cross the Jordan and enter the good land the Lord your God is giving you as your inheritance. I will die in this land. I will not cross the Jordan, but you are about to cross over and take possession of that good land. Be careful not to forget the covenant of the Lord your God that he made with you. Do not make for yourselves an idol in the form of anything the Lord your God has forbidden, for the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. After you have had children and grandchildren and have lived in the land a long time, if you then become corrupt and make any kind of idol, doing evil in the eyes of the Lord your God and arousing his anger, I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you this day, that you will quickly perish from the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess. You will not live there long, but will certainly be destroyed. The Lord will scatter you among the peoples, and only a few of you will survive among the nations to which the Lord will drive you. There you will worship man-made gods of wood and stone, which cannot see or hear or eat or smell. But if from there you seek the Lord your God, you will find him if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul. When you are in distress and all these things have happened to you, then in later days you will return to the Lord your God and obey him. For the Lord your God is a merciful God. He will not abandon or destroy you or forget the covenant with your ancestors, which he confirmed to them by oath.
All right, let's talk about the O and comma observations. So looking at all this, what do you guys see?
All right, my first observation right there at the beginning, 15 and 19, it feels like Moses remembers very clearly when he left to go up Sinai to receive the law, and he came back to see the people worshiping a golden calf. It almost feels like, okay, I've been burned, I've been traumatized by this, so let me say very clearly to the people before I die. And what I like is like he's really thorough, right? He doesn't just say, hey, guys, don't make an idol. That's a bad idea. He says, he goes through this description. He's like, don't make an idol that looks like a man or a woman or an animal or a bird, a fish, a star, a moon or sun. Like he really is.
I do not like them, Sam. I am.
Like it's a very long list, but it's, but I feel like all the parents reading this could relate to like Moses sort of parenting them. Like, I'm not about to get lawyered by my kids and say, oh, there was a loophole. Like there, it really does feel like he's like, I'm going to make this abundantly clear. There is nothing that you should worship outside of the Lord alone. And he has a very thorough description here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you even say that. Whenever I talk to the kids about Deuteronomy, I always talk about how, like, what are your parents' last words before they leave the house or they leave you? Like, they tell you like the important things, right? Like, this is what I want you to do. Like, clean your room, make your bed, do this, da, da, da. Like, you give the instructions. And I always feel like that's what Deuteronomy is. It's Moses being like, okay, here we go. Last words. Let's, this is the important stuff,
yes.
right? And I think, one thing that I pointed out there is that you saw no form of any kind the day the Lord spoke to you. And then there's that therefore word, which I always love pointing out your buts and yets and therefores. But therefore watch yourselves very carefully. So I said, because you saw no form, don't make a form. Like, when you can't see an embodied creator, don't bow to the created. Like, don't be enticed into bowing down to them and worshiping things that are not God. So that was just right away. I mean, he kind of gives you a pretty good message right off the bat.
Yeah, he does.
Skipping ahead a little bit.
Yeah, and enticed stood out to me, that word in verse 19. Enticed, it's almost acknowledging, there will be things that allure you, that kind of bring you in. And so there's going to be things that seem to be, enticing, right? And so it's just kind of eye-opening in that there are so many things, even outside of this, that we can make an idol out of that aren't very enticing.
I was drawn to the word image there. The word idol, which also has the word image there. It immediately evokes like the image of God on the very first page of the Bible, that human beings are made in God's image. And the idea that many people will say is like, the part of the reason we don't make images to worship God is God already made images. He made us. And so if anything's going to represent God, it's going to be us and our behavior and how we live and that sort of thing. But it's easy to say, well, I'm gonna actually make something that keeps God contained and simpler or whatever. Rather than living into your vocation, you sort of say, well, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get God in this nice little tidy package and image and so on. So I just noted that connection to Genesis 1 there.
My next observation was verse 24. Moses said, "Be careful not to forget the covenant of the Lord your God. They made with you. Do not make for yourselves an idol." And then, this is just such a striking verse. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. I think the reason it stuck out to me is because I feel like we've read the Lord is a consuming fire a few times recently. If you've been following the Bible Savvy reading plan, we read this earlier in the Pentateuch. I couldn't remember which book was when Aaron's sons go in, they offer an unauthorized offering and they're consumed by fire. Like, the Lord is a consuming fire. And we also just read it in Hebrews chapter 12, where it also describes the Lord as a consuming fire. And here we see it again, like God is a consuming fire. So it's a repeated word, but not in this chapter, but there's a few times throughout Scripture that it's repeated. So I felt like that was striking to me. The jealous God as well, but specifically the consuming fire was something that grabbed my attention. Yeah.
Well, and there is a contrast that does repeat for the Lord your God in verse 31, where it says, for the Lord your God is a merciful God. So he's a jealous God, a consuming fire, a jealous God. And then it says he's a merciful God. He will not abandon or destroy you or forget the covenant with your ancestors, which he confirmed to them by oath. And so I noticed the contrast between those, that was a contrast. The other interesting thing that I saw in that, though, is that comes, that for the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God, kind of comes at the end of when he outlines the covenant consequences. Like, there's consequences to breaking the covenant. And then the last kind of description there for the Lord your God as a merciful God comes after the anti-consequence, which is from there you will seek the Lord your God and you will find him if you seek him with all your heart and all your soul. So it's like a full contrast from, hey, here's the covenant, the consequences to disobeying the covenant. And like, here's the the anti-consequence, right? Like here's, but if you do this, then this is like who you will find God to be.
Yeah.
Verse 21, the Lord was angry with me because of you. I couldn't help kind of but laugh at that, because it's like, this is chapter 4, and this is already the third time that he has said to the Israelites, I can't go into the promised land because of you. He's like, this is all your fault that I can't get in.
Moses.
But then it's like he continues to lead them, and I know that's not like the focus of this passage, but it just really really made me think, like, I don't think that I could do that. I would be, if I'm not going to lie, like, I'd be pretty ticked, right? Like, wait, I can't get in the promised land, but I got to continue to lead you guys. Like, this was your fault. Like, you drove me to that.
You did this.
All right, but I've got to play devil's advocate here, because I read that and I was also like, wait a second, Moses, is it
really their fault?
Is it really their fault? Because when you trace it, it was a moment when the Lord said, "Speak to the rock," and he struck the rock, and he didn't do exactly, and he was a little irreverent to the Lord. So, I was trying to do my best, Clayton, and think, like, what would Clayton compare this to, contemporarily? But do you have any response to that?
All I was thinking is, like, this sounds like an argument that I might have when Michelle and I disagree on, whose fault it is, right? You know what I mean? Like, you have those moments where you're like, yeah, but you in your mind, you're like, it's kind of you, you know what I mean? But well, maybe it's actually me. Like, maybe this is my problem. You know what I mean? But I want to be like, because you were in this mess. It's like, 15%.
It's like, I knocked this thing off the counter because you frustrated me, and and
right.
I wouldn't have been knocked it off if you didn't start the
Oh gosh, yeah. So
that's what I thought. The kids, I'm like, I'm screaming right at them, and it's like, well, maybe I wouldn't get so mad and scream if you were obedient. But then it's like, oh, I should probably take accountability that I shouldn't be disciplining out of anger right now.
Yeah. Well, I hear my kids say that to each other. It's like, no, you did. You started. It's like, no, you guys are both at fault here. Yeah, absolutely. Here's my observation in terms of the consequences. So he talks about, like, if you go into the land, you get enticed by these idols, you start worshiping them. I'm gonna send you out of the land. So we've talked about this in other times through the Bible. There's an exile where they go into the land, but eventually they have to leave. But verse 28 is really interesting. They're sent out among the nations, and it says, there you will worship man-made gods of wood and stone, which is so fascinating because that's what got them in trouble. And in some ways, the punishment is God saying, you want to worship gods? Well, go ahead. Go out in all the nations and find all the gods you want and go and worship them and see how that goes. And it made me think of a place in the book of Romans where it says, people were enticed to worship these things, and God handed them over to their desires, right? There's a handing over. Sometimes the consequence of sin is, well, let's see what happens when you keep sinning. And there are times in life when God says, well, I would not want you to do that. But if you're going to do that, you're going to reap the consequence of that. And that will be the discipline of it, the experience of those things.
I love in verse 20 where he says, to be the people of his inheritance as you now are. But as for you, the Lord took you and brought you out of the iron smelting furnace out of Egypt. Like, don't go back, but to be the people of his inheritance as you now are. Moses is wonderful at the identity reminders. He takes the minute to say, like, this is who you are. Like, remember, this is who you are. You are the people of his inheritance. And then he goes on to talk about, consequences and things like that. Yeah. And I think there's significance in that little identity reminder in the middle.
I noticed the simple thing. We talked about God being a merciful God, but it's so interesting that there's always a way back, right? Like they go into these consequences, and you would think it's just over, right? Like, all right, God promises, I'm going to get you the land. I'm going to do all these things. He does all these things. They mess it up and they lose it. And it would seem like that's the end. But the fact that there's always a way back, that when they turn scattered among the nations, he's going to hear them and say, all right, you're seeking me. I'll let you find me. And they can come back, and he restores them. It's pretty amazing. And that Moses would tell them ahead of time, right? Like, hey, this is where this is going to go. But even on the other side of that, God's going to be merciful. There is a way back even from that.
Well, and this is jumping the gun a little bit because the interview that you're doing is coming out later, but please watch that because I learned a lot about the covenant. I got, a sneak peek, and it was really, she does such a beautiful job of describing like, what does the covenant really mean? And why is this significant? And so when you know that, and then you look at this and you say, okay, wait, he outlines multiple times, like, don't forget the covenant the Lord, the covenant the Lord your God that he made with you. And then if you become corrupt when your grandchildren and children, when you've lived in the land a long time, this might happen again. This has been the pattern, but he reminds them, like, there is a covenant. He will not abandon or destroy you or forget the covenant with your ancestors, which he confirmed by oath. So again, watch that episode. about Deuteronomy with Sandra Richter, because I think you're going to understand in a deeper way what that covenant significance really, truly is.
Yeah, 26 through the end. I mean, there's a lot of will. It's will, will, will. So it's really indicating it's really prophetic language. Moses is saying, like, this is not a matter of if, it's a matter of will. Like, you will turn to idols. You will be scattered. You will, be destroyed, essentially, in verse 26. So it's really, it's not a matter of if. And I thought it was interesting, too, in 26, it says, I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you. So he's already setting the stage, like, I have my two witnesses, which is pretty parallel to Mosaic law, which states, like, there has to be two witnesses to bring forth this, a trial. So he's saying, like, this is a crime. It's a crime against God when you turn to idolatry. There will be consequences to this.
I noticed in, verse 28 here, and it talks about the man-made gods of wood and stone, which cannot see or hear or eat or smell. It's like, look, let's think of all the things like a baby can do. They can't even do that. Like there's a certain amount of like, let me show you how powerless they are, which is interesting. You talked about them being enticing, right? Like there's something that they're promising, and it seems like, oh, this is going to deliver. That's why I'm going to go to these gods. And Moses is trying to break that spell in a sense, like to say, look, I know it looks like they're going to deliver something, but they are so weak. Like they literally can't even do the basic things. And why would you go to them? Like there's a certain, like, just let's be real about how powerless they are. And I think in our own lives, when we go turn to things and we're like, this is good, this is doing something for me that I need. That's why I keep going back to this. To actually kind of say, like, really? Is it actually, like, how's it actually working out for you? Is it actually delivering what you need? Yeah. That's a thing that all of us need sometimes.
Yeah. Verse 29, I know we've mentioned already, but it says, but if from there you seek the Lord your God, you will find him if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul. So seek is said twice, which I thought was unique. And again, I think just the way my brain works when I'm reading scripture, anytime I see something that reminds me of another part of scripture, I think, oh, theme across scripture. And this was like a weird verse where it felt like a New Testament verse. Like it didn't feel like an Old Testament verse, in that like there was some language like Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, like ask and you'll receive, seek and you will find. And it's like there's later on he says some of the same stuff that I think when Jesus said that, like seek and you will find, they probably remember Moses' final words saying, hey, but if you walk away, if you seek God, you will find him if you seek him with all your heart, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
Well, and it wasn't even with all your heart. It's with all your heart and all your soul, which is like the everything. That's the all and everything. Anytime you see that, it's like it's the way of saying, and then some, like all of it, every single bit of you needs to be seeking. It's just puts a lot of emphasis on that. And you don't want to miss that.
I got one last observation here. It's just the connection back to Genesis. I always find it interesting when you kind of see these patterns replayed. But Moses is saying, essentially, like God says to Adam and Eve, he says, okay, look, I'm putting you in a place. It's going to be awesome. You're going to love it. And it's going to be wonderful for you. But if there's a thing that if you do it, you will die. Like it actually says, like you'll certainly be destroyed. Like on the day you eat it, you will surely die, right? It sounds like that. And then it says, when you do it, you'll get kicked out. And it sounds exactly like Genesis 3. Like here was a good land you had, and now you're kicked out of it. And so it's just kind of the like, hey, you're doing the same thing that people have been doing from the beginning. And there's a predictability to it. But guess what? There's mercy on the other side, a realism and yet a grace to that. Let's turn to one of the M's in comma. Let's talk about meditation here. I'm going to give you 45 seconds to prayerfully ponder these verses 23 and 24. Be careful not to forget the covenant of the Lord your God that he made with you. Do not make for yourselves an idol in the form of anything the Lord your God has forbidden. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. right, let's talk about the other M in comma. Let's talk about message. How would you sum up a principle from this passage?
My message was watch what you worship, because obviously throughout the whole thing, it's talking about, not worshiping idols. And I think that, we all need that reminder. I think sometimes not worshiping something that is created, and even, going into some of that language of, just those things can be enticing. Some of the language of that was kind of garden language as well, where you can look at it and say, will I surely die? will this actually happen? And so my message when I did was just to watch what you worship.
All right, so my message is based on two descriptions of God that really point to his attributes. And so my message was, our God is simultaneously jealous and merciful, but testing those qualities isn't a good idea.
All right. That's good. Courtney, what do you got?
Mine was, I actually stole some words from the late Tim Keller. The way he described idols, I think, is really good.
No one here has ever just stolen something straight from Keller. Never.
So my message is, guard yourself against anything that absorbs your heart more than God.
My message is, it's hard to serve a God you can't see, which is why we take up the gods our culture offers. So I just looked at that. You didn't see a form. And so it's really easy to just find something. Oh, look, it's right there. I can see it. That's way more reassuring than this God that I can't see. All right, let's talk about the A in comma, application. What do you do in light of your message?
Oh, my message was watch what you worship. And so obviously there are things in my life that I'm certain that I kind of derive maybe worth from, or maybe it's not worship as in I'm holding my phone up and, singing worship songs to it or something like that. But there are created things that I put in front of God sometimes. There are created things that I seek something that that's not mine to hold, quite honestly. I'm not supposed to know all things, and yet I have Google in my hand. I'm not supposed to, be able to be a million places at once, and yet I sometimes seek that through, technical ways and means. And so just watching what I worship, looking at kind of taking that inventory and saying, okay, are there places in my life where I am worshiping something that I'm putting something in the place of God? I'm trying to substitute that and grasp something that's maybe not mine in the midst of that. So just to watch what I worship.
My message was, our God is simultaneously jealous and merciful, but testing those qualities isn't a good idea. So my application is, don't provoke God's jealousy and purge the idols from my life. So I think you talked a little bit about being absorbed into something. I think a lot of times when we think about modern day idols, we can ask questions like, what's getting more of my attention than Jesus? Where do I spend more of my time? Another question I've been asking recently, where does my money go? Sometimes we can just look at our bank statement to discover where our idols live and just say, what's getting more of my money than the Lord? And asking some of those hard questions. But I think they're necessary questions if we're going to not provoke God's jealousy.
Mine is similar to yours. It's really just take inventory of what has captured my attention away from God. And sometimes they can even be good things. Idols are not always bad. I mean, we can even make an idol out of ministry or our family. And so I think for me, it's just to be intentional in prayer and ask God to show me, instead of me trying to figure out what the things are. No, God, you show me what's in my heart that has, captured more of my attention than you have.
That's good. So my message was, it's hard to serve a God you can't see, which is why we take up the gods our culture offers. And I want to take really seriously for my application the idea of the seeing, right? That you're seeing these things that are much easier to grasp and recognize. And I actually think that sometimes when we talk about what are our idols, the reason it happens is because of whatever we put in front of our eyes. What am I paying attention to? And if I'm going to idolize work, it's not just because my thoughts go there. It's because I open up my email and I'm looking to see what's there. If I'm going to idolize money, well, it's often because I'm looking at a bill or I'm looking at a budget or that. There are literally things that you say, I've put my attention on this. My senses are drawn to this. And sometimes saying, I'm going to have like limits. There's a reason why many of us say, you know what, after a certain point in the day, my phone goes away, or it goes gray on a lot of apps, or those sorts of things. Or to say, I'm going to decide. It's like the Bible before phone thing, in the morning, right? Like what do you look at? What do you actually give your attention to? It shapes where your worship goes. And then I also want to take seriously the listening part, because it talks about, we didn't see God, but he spoke. And so sometimes you say, I got to guard my eyes from the things that are going to entice me to say, this is the thing I really got to think is most important, and open up my ears to say, what is God actually saying? What is he saying in his word? What is he saying through his spirit? What is he saying through his people? And the listening over the seeing sometimes really helps with all of that.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Join us again next Monday for a new episode where we'll be looking at another passage from the Bible Savvy reading schedule. And in the meantime, if you're not following along with the reading plan, check out BibleSavvy.com. Also, you can subscribe and leave a review on whatever platform you're listening or watching on. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Email us your questions or suggestions at podcast@BibleSavvy.com. Lastly, tell your friends, and we'll talk to you next week.